This is the One Piece Podcast, episode 595 for the week of November 11th, 2019. My name is Zach, and we have a great show for you this week. We're going to have Stephen Paul on a little bit later to talk about how Japanese history has influenced the Wano arc. And we also have two amazing interviews as part of our Romance Dawn segments, one for Mike Toole of Anime News Network and Discotech, and the other one of David Brothers from Viz. He is an editor there and formerly of Image Comics and a lot more. Our Romance Dawn segments bring in newer fans who are not necessarily fully caught up, but they talk about their experience with One Piece and what they think of it so far. So make sure to listen to this episode. It's a really good one. Before we get started, I do want to mention on Patreon, we have a brand new, almost 2-hour episode of us and our new series, Crewing Around, where we talk about nothing in particular and anything in particular. For that episode, it's me, Alex, Steve, Ed, and Brian Newton. And we talk a little bit about our history with the podcast, convention stories, and Steve has a new job. He is working as a storyboard artist at Rick and Morty, whose season premiere just happened to be last night as of this recording. So check that out at Adult Swim. So check out our Patreon podcast at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast. You could access that episode for just $5 a month. We have a lot more there, including the full OPP Japan documentary. That's for any level on Patreon. We also have OPP 10 videos from our most recent trip to Japan. We have exclusive episodes of our Crewing Around podcast, as I've discussed, as well as chances to appear on our podcast, alternate images and episode titles. Those are from Maddie and Steve. You could check those out going all the way back to when we started those. So if you haven't, please join us there at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast. So there's no manga chapter this week if you haven't already gathered, but we do have those interviews and that special segment from Steven this week. Next week, we are going to be at AnimeNYC at the Jacob Javits Center. We're going to be doing a live manga recap there. So if you're in the area, in the New York City area, please come by. That's Sunday, November 17th at 3:30 p.m. It's going to be me, Zach, and Steve at the Javits Center. We're going to go through chapter 962 of One Piece. Plus, for the first half hour of that, we're going to kind of catch up with the story and go through some of the big One Piece news and introduce who we are for those who don't know. So check that out. Again, that's at AnimeNYC. And for those who can't make it, we're going to have a regularly scheduled episode here with special guest Rogers Bass. And then the following week, we're going to have our special Kuja cast, which is our all-female episode of the One Piece podcast, including Kelly, Jill, Maddie, the two hosts of the My Hero Academia podcast, and Joe. They'll all be on. And then we have a really great December for you. So stick around. That's going to be about it. So why don't we get straight into the show?
Hey everybody, welcome to Romance Dawn. It's me, Alex, hosting this segment yet again. And with me, as always, are Zach.
Hey, Alex.
And Steve.
Hey.
Alex, what's the point of this segment?
Oh, Jesus, Zach. How? Zach, read your cue cards. No, it's...
Oh.
This Romance Dawn is a segment where we talk to a special guest or a new friend about One Piece, their journey into One Piece, and their history, their weeb origin story, as I like to say. So today we have Mike Toole with us. Mike, how is it going?
It's going pretty well, thank you. I'm very curious about who this Romance Dawn person is. Yeah. I'm hoping we can learn about him.
He's the main character of the story. Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What you're currently doing and
sure.
How you got there.
Absolutely. From the Japanese animation standpoint, I'm the editor at large at Anime News Network, the largest English language editorial resource for Japanese animation on the internet. I have a slightly less than bi-weekly column there called The Mike Toole Show that I've been doing for close to a decade. I've been writing professionally about Japanese animation since 1996. Started for AnimeNYC magazine, have written for both print and the web since then. I've been on-screen host for Crunchyroll a couple of times, and I'm also a producer for Discotheque Media, the home video company located in Orlando, Florida. My current project that just wrapped up is called Giant Robo: The Animation, one of the greatest OVAs ever made. You can look for that on Blu-ray in December, packed with extras right before Christmas.
Excellent.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from in the anime world.
That's great. So at this point, I mean, at this point you are quite the guru. When was your first exposure to anime at large?
Oh, I remember it very well. I was 4 years old, and it was 1980, which tells you how damn old I was. And a show called Battle of the Planets was at that point running in syndication on weekday mornings, and it would start at 9 or 9:30 a.m. after I had left for my pre-kindergarten schooling. But there was one magical day when, for some reason or another, we didn't go to school. We went to my grandma's house, and I got to watch Battle of the Planets for the first time. And it was about these amazing characters in bird costumes fighting against an astral space mummy. And it struck me immediately. I could tell right away that there was something different about it, something more cinematic. And I sought the stuff out relentlessly. I soon started watching a show called Star Blazers, which I later learned was originally Space Battleship Yamato. And the thing was, at the time, as a small child, I was just like, well, this is just cartoons, right? It was actually my dad who was just like, yeah, that stuff's all from Japan. Look at the end credits. It's all Japanese names. And yeah, he was right. There were Japanese names there. And but yeah, I've been a lifelong viewer of anime and kind of became an ardent, active fan in 1994 when I went to college at UMass and joined the UMJAMS, the University of Massachusetts Japanese Animation and Manga Society.
That's a great acronym.
Yes.
So how did you make anime your profession from there?
Well, it's kind of a side hustle for me. I'm a corporate broadcaster in real life. I do webcasts for corporate clients, but turning it into a hobby business really just started with writing about it for fun and profit. I said earlier that I started at AnimeNYC magazine, which was actually printed by Viz, the folks who publish One Piece in North America. That was kind of their house magazine at the time. They've since ceased publication of AnimeNYC. Mm-hmm. But in 1996, I basically wrote an email to the editor-in-chief of AnimeNYC, a lady named Trish Ledoux, and was just like, I'm curious about writing for the magazine. How would I initiate that? And she was like, well, we're always looking for freelancers, so just send me a couple of writing samples. I sent in a couple of samples. One of them was a review of a VHS title called The Abashiri Family. And she specifically responded to that one and said, okay, this one's good enough for print. It's going to be in the August issue. What else you got?
Cool.
And it all kind of flowered from there. I did a bunch of magazine work for a couple of years. And then in 1998, for about 10 years, starting in 98, I ran my own site called Anime Jump that published reviews, interviews, and other stuff. And worked for Otaku USA, Anime Insider. Crunchyroll brought me on for a couple of projects in recent years. And starting in 2014, Discotheque brought me aboard to do extras development, materials procurement, and just some general production duties. I'm one of several Swiss Army knives that little company employs to kind of be on the cutting edge of anime on home video.
I mean, most importantly, I think your narrator role, right, in Bananya,
that's
probably
right.
stands as the height of anyone's potential anime career.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's kind of the summit for me so far. I'm not being all that facetious about it. I absolutely love that series. That's my one foray into dubbing anime myself. And I don't just play the narrator. I rewrote the dialogue for English. I directed it. Farmed out some of the incidental voices to Jose Archimedo, who is someone I believe is known to you guys quite well.
Yes.
And you know, I of course was hoping to take that role back up, but there is a new narrator in Bananya in the current running season. So if that does ultimately get dubbed, we might see a casting change.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I think Jose brought what was it, Steve? Do you remember? To my wedding, I remember he brought some Banana merch or something with him.
Because
We stopped at Toys R Us on the way.
That's what it was.
It was the last Toys R Us, basically. The last time we could ever go into a Toys R Us, and
So
we
he
all
just
got
grabbed
something.
Banana merch.
Yeah.
Yep,
You should have seen the glint in his eye. He was way too excited.
There's all sorts of Banana merchandise, and all of it is compulsively buyable. And I'm excited that season 2 has started, because that means there's going to be another wave. I thought that had crested, and we were not going to see much more. But nope, it's back, baby.
Yeah. Discotech's doing great work. I was tickled. I was tickled that Fatal Fury, the motion picture, finally came out on Blu-ray. My favorite anime.
And
my favorite anime movie of all time.
oh, glad you like it so much.
Yeah,
I feel like Discotech is almost like the company whose anime you kind of graduate into, or maybe it's just like our generation of anime is just coming out. Everything from Discotech, I feel like, is aimed to 30 to 50. But I love it. I'm happy about that.
I would say even 20 or 25 to 50, just because a lot of the shows we've been hitting recently, like we put Sonic X out on SD on Blu-ray. Okay. We're doing Bobo 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 Bo soon. I've had fans come up to me conventions and saying, "This was my favorite show when I was a child." We're talking about Bobo Bo.
Oh my god!
And it's like, that wasn't that long ago, kid.
It wasn't at all, though. Wow, that's wow.
My response to that was going to be, I don't know what the hell the 20-somethings are doing, but okay.
Oh, they're
Alex,
catching up. Believe me.
I know. Yeah. Before they know it, they're going to be, in their 40s.
So, Mike, at that point, like, how did you find One Piece? How did you get into One Piece?
Well, I mean, I pretty much started following One Piece when it started coming out, and when the manga started coming out in English in 2003. Before that, I had seen a couple of episodes. I think they were actually like 2000, 2001 era real video files.
Yeah,
with,
buddy.
320 by 180 or whatever it was. But I mean, I was in the room when at Anime Expo New York, when Gen Fukunaga was musing about the possibility of licensing One Piece for Funimation. He was specifically talking about how easy it would be to make that show Y7 rated for kids, and 4 kids ultimately got it, and we saw how it wasn't that easy to make that happen, huh?
To be fair, they probably made it like Y4 or 3, whatever lower rating.
Made it as easy as they could. But yeah, I started buying the manga when it was released in paperback in 2003.
Nice.
And I kept up with it for ardently for about 24 volumes. Started falling off around volume 20. That was when the recession, the financial crisis hit, and my spouse and myself lost our jobs, and I had a little less disposable income.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That'll do it.
That's rough. I'm assuming that you've jumped back on since.
I got about to volume 48 or 50 using library copies, and of course, once Shonen Jump offered their incredible, ridiculous $2 a month subscription deal, it was like, okay. And I've kind of just been knocking down series as I approached them. Like, okay, I'm caught up on One Punch Man. All right, I'm caught up on Black Clover. Okay, I caught up on Promised Neverland. Okay, it's time to catch up on One Piece. And
those are all good choices.
yeah, and I'm happy to say that I've been knocking down anywhere from 10 to like 50 chapters a week, and I'm already at Whole Cake Island, so I'm right around the corner.
Awesome. Yeah. You're very close. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's such a wonderful and fun series. It's a comic that for me is ultimately about resisting despair and how that's the real path to freedom. And I really dig it, man. And I appreciate that it's so widely popular now. I feel like people are just discovering it in droves as new media comes out.
Yeah, it's quite heartening now. Back in the day when when I was a frosty young One Piece fan in the early aughts. You'd be hard pressed to go to a convention and find people cosplaying One Piece. I think I went to a KatsuCon in like January of 2003, and I found 3 One Piece cosplayers, and I was over the moon. And I don't think One Piece has really picked up steam until the last couple of years here, honestly, in terms of mainstream.
Yeah, I would
anime.
agree with that. I mean, I
Like,
did have the wonderful, fulfilling moment about 4 or 5 years ago of handing over the 24 volumes that I had collected of One Piece to my nephews, who are good little weebs. We all have Shonen Jump subscriptions now.
that's great.
That's perfect.
Yeah, that's super. As far as you are in the series now, where do you have like a favorite story arc that you tout as the peak so far?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I think the Summit War, the Impel Down and then to Marineford is the most exciting one. That's just a wild ride. So much happens in one spot. Beyond that, I mean, I love the moments when characters are caught off guard, like when the boss of Skypia, Enel, realizes that his electric shocks just aren't going to work on Luffy. Corona realizing that her despair attack does not work on Usopp.
You're referring to one specific type of face.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One specific reaction when Oda just takes the comedy reaction face and dials it up to 2,000. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, speaking to that, actually, Oda's art is, I would say it's pretty non-conventional when it comes to traditional manga and anime, or what people think of traditional manga and anime as. When you were getting into it, did you have that sentiment as well?
Yeah. What I notice about Oda's art, what leaps out to me is that it's got really bright, clean, expressive lines and not a whole lot of shading. He'll make use of shading when, like, if he wants to do a specific mood panel or introduce a villain for the first time. But for the most part, it's all line work. It's all just, a really strong, expressive line. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Can I just throw in a question? So you come in from a thank you, Alex. So
You're welcome, Zach.
You come in from a kind of unique place where you read One Piece, like when we all, like, before I started, but definitely around the time Steve and Alex here started One Piece. But you also took this very long, break to it, and so you kind of have both the perspective of a lot of the people online right now who are reading it through the first time, but also that old school One Piece fan from back then. Has it kind of changed? I mean, how has the reading experience, I'll say, been between 2003 Mike versus 2019, and how you've enjoyed the series? Yeah.
I'll say that I'm very surprised and very impressed at how ambitious Oda's story has become. I definitely feel like he's kind of grown and made stuff up as he's gone along. But 2003 Mike never would have never had this notion that, oh, well, they're not just going to the Grand Line. There are all these different regions of the sea that they have to visit, and it's not just about becoming king of the pirates. It's about building a coalition to overtake, the seven warlords of the sea, and eventually knock off the four emperors, fight back the corrupt world government, and all these different things that are happening in the story now. That I had no inkling of that, and there wasn't a whole lot of foreshadowing to that either back then. So. It was. It's been quite a roller coaster ride over the past 4 or 5 months. Just absorbing all of that.
Mm-hmm. No, I
volume
definitely
24 is I think the first hints of that are around where you stopped. Yeah.
Because that's right. I mean, I think that's around the end of Alabasta.
Yeah. It's Alabasta it's a lot. Like every once in a while, you have to sort of take a break or two. To sort of, decompress a little bit after a really long One Piece arc. Favorite characters, Straw Hats and non-Straw Hats. What do you think?
Well, my favorite character overall is Bon Clay because they're just such a pure person.
Good choice. Yeah,
I was going to say
we get that. We get that one a lot.
It's almost to the point of they clearly Bon Clay survived the perils of Impel Down, but what's happening with them now? I want to know. My favorite Straw Hat is Frankie because he's fearless, he's inventive, he dresses inappropriately for most situations. He drinks too much soda, he respects women, and he's full of tons of enthusiasm. Also, with the exception of Brooke, he's kind of the old man of the group, and I can relate to that.
Yeah, I feel that.
It's he's like what, 35 or 36? Man, that's ancient.
Yeah.
I'd say in the English dub, you probably have his closest voice dialogue with Patrick Seitz. So if anything, that's even more of a connection there, I would think. Alex,
Yeah.
sorry, guy. Yeah.
Oh no. Oh, I was just going to say that I was looking up the other day. I was looking up ages of characters in Gundam in First Gundam the other day, and Frankie is older than Rambaral.
Oh my god!
Yep.
Rambaral is 35, and so is Giran. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wait, how old is Frankie?
36.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, I guessed right.
Yeah, Frankie is 36 years old. Yeah, and if you'll believe that, Dozle Zabi is 27, which is absolutely fucking nuts. So at the very least, characters in One Piece are allowed to age a little bit more appropriately than other series in the past.
And I think that's a key to its popularity too. There's kind of a widespread of ages,
Yeah. Anywhere from 0 to 140, however old Kureha is.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite villain?
Favorite? I mean, after going through Punk Hazard, I'm surprisingly, I've gotten surprisingly attached to Caesar. There, he's he's turned out to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, Caesar's great fun.
What's it called? The Dressrosa there. Don Doflamingo. He's a really fun heavy. He's that weird Michelle Polnareff look of his with the bug eye shades. You never really see his eyes behind those, do you?
Not yet.
Yeah. that's going to be some big reveal, isn't it?
The SBS question that Oda got about that was when he takes off his sunglasses, he has another pair of sunglasses under it.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's the answer to the question, but
I think we're just hoping he just has beady little Charlie Brown eyes. That's all.
Oh yeah, that was. I forgot that's what we were thinking.
That was our joke.
Yeah. Well, Django had the heart-shaped eyes, so he can't have that joke. Yeah. So.
And I also dig I dig Buggy the Clown's like almost Uatu the Watcher. Like he's involved in every great story, but is somehow weirdly passive. Things just seem to happen to him more than any other character.
I can never interfere. Yeah.
If I could quote Ed, I think Ed likes to describe Buggy's pathos as failing upwards. So.
Oh yeah, totally.
He's the Michael Scott. Yeah.
He has fallen stratospherically up the stairs too.
Yeah. No, for
sure.
I
mean, he's weirdly likable. I mean, he's got the survival tools you need in One Piece's world, I think.
Yeah, I think he's a really great example of someone who's despicable, but not so despicable. Like Caesar Clown did do experiments on children, so there's he will always have that baggage with him. But Buggy, the worst he did, well, he may have killed the guy, I don't know. But who remembers? It was volume 2. But I mean, for the most part, he was just being kind of an asshole and stuck whatever those knives were in Luffy's hat. So you have reason to hate him, but not loathe him.
He's lovable.
So he's a lovable scamp.
He's a lovable scamp. The fun thing about Buggy is that he totally is gaming the system. He's been around as long as Shanks has, so he knows the ins and outs, but he doesn't have the strength to back it up. So it's kind of neat to see. It's kind of neat to see what Buggy does at all times.
Yeah, he's got this invincible credibility to him among the other characters, and it's humorous to contrast that with his desperate, sweaty, I'm about to die internal monologue.
Yeah. Have you watched have you watched the anime at all? The TV animation or the films?
I tried some years back. I tried to rush through a bunch of the anime. I made it maybe through 30 or 40 episodes. Since then, after I fell off of that and decided, I don't think I can make that happen. I've kept up with as many of the movies as I could. I've seen Film Z, I've seen Strong World, and I absolutely will be seeing Stampede this week.
Yeah.
They offered me a digital screener, and I was like, no way, man, you can't keep me away from that theater.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm especially looking forward to watching another One Piece movie on the big screen, but this time subbed. I'm over the moon about that.
Yeah, and just in the general trend of having these 1 or 2 day engagements for anime films seems to be working for everyone. It's been making me really happy. I love seeing anime at the movies, and
Yeah, for sure.
definitely looking forward to doing that with One Piece.
Did you have you seen Promare?
Oh,
Did you get to
sure.
see that?
Yeah, I've seen that 3 times. I saw it at Otakon, and then I saw it twice in its theatrical run. I'm a big fan of that picture, man. Loved it.
Ah, man, far out. Very cool. Yeah,
We should have seen that
cool.
when it wasn't it out when we were over in Japan? Now I'm trying
It
to
was,
I remember
yeah.
seeing the ads, yeah.
They've just
yeah.
rolled out 4DX screenings in Japan, and I am horribly envious. I would love to see that in
Oof.
4DX.
Might be
Oh
able to,
man.
smell the scent of roses when a character's mask gets broken off.
What I've heard that there's water sprays, there's blasts
That
of
one I
heat,
heard.
and lots of use of wind.
That's awesome.
That's what
Yeah.
they at One Piece Tokyo Tower, they had that basically, right?
Oh,
in
for
that
like the
film
little
that they showed?
the animated short.
Well,
yeah, that
I
little
mean-
short. Yeah.
Yeah.
One Piece Film Gold was kind of made for 4DX, wasn't it? I watched that on a plane on a trip back from Tokyo, and I thought it was entertaining, but the impression I got for it was mostly just there are way too many first-person point of view shots in this movie.
Oh,
Just
you're
totally-
right.
Totally
Yeah.
made to, like there's like 2 or 3 points where it's just like, here's the 4DX part.
You know, I
Yeah.
never put 2 and 2 together there, but that's absolutely. Gold was a really cool movie to see in theaters too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking
can
for this
imagine.
one. This one's gonna be a riot. You know, it just looks like I think Greg on our podcast described it as an amazing DBZ movie. So I'm just looking forward to
90s
that.
DBZ movie.
A 90s DBZ movie.
A 90s DBZ movie. All right. Let's get ready to take all of our One Piece action figures and crash them into each other and go.
Basically, yeah.
That's right.
If
I mean,
I,
was
yeah, I'd
doing
better,
that anyway.
A 90s won't be a 90s DBZ movie, huh? There better be some tracking lines on the screen.
the best way I could describe the film is it's One Piece Broly, the movie. It's a kid
yeah, I
from
forgot
you
the
saw
Dragon
it.
Ball Super movie from earlier this year.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that was a good one in terms of just pure action animation. So
That's for sure.
I'm pretty hyped for it, and also, you know, it's a 20th anniversary project.
Yeah.
The cast lists have been leaked, and we know that every character and their dog is going to be making at least a cameo appearance. So that's exciting too.
Yeah. Mike, what do you think about I mean, this is just speaking of, anime movies at the movies,
Yeah.
like we've come so far, like we have anime at our fingertips these days without having to really, trek down to a tape swap store or an import store. Like, I don't know. Do you ever like think about that and how it's I don't know. I couldn't even. I would never even dreamed that this could have happened back in the day.
Oh yeah. I mean, in terms of accessibility, we are in a golden age where there is so much available. Patton Oswalt, the comedian, had a monologue about how every day is the best day that has ever happened for entertainment because everything is available and more keeps coming out. For anime, that's a little bit of a double-edged sword because I really feel that they're producing too much of it these days. They're producing so much content that it's challenging for the public to absorb it all. I mean, that's part of what kind of kept me off One Piece for the longest time. I was intimidated by how much of it there was, even in manga form. It seemed like a really tall mountain to climb. And in that respect, I would just say, there's just so much, and it's I've actually been hanging back from watching a lot of new shows. I've been keeping up with some things and just picking 1 or 2. And God, doing that down from watching 10 or 12 new shows a season, it's like stepping away from a furnace. So, don't forget to do that from time to time, man. Dislodge your all-consuming mind mouth from the endless fire hose of new content. But yeah, I mean,
I'm definitely at that point in my life too.
yeah. I think it's an amazing time to be a fan of anime, and there's such a diversity of content, so many interesting things to see. Classics are being kept alive, new stuff is happening all the time. My only concern is, like I said, so much new stuff is being produced now that I worry that not enough of the good stuff is getting absorbed by people, and it's fallen by the wayside. But yeah, what a time.
What a time to be alive! Yeah, no, for
Okay.
sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
certainly in terms of the news that has come out this weekend about the dubbed version, which sounds like it's going back into production, huh?
Yeah, I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, see, from my standpoint as someone who does work in the business, I feel like part of why that's happening is we are reaching a tipping point where revenue and traffic from streaming is starting to match or exceed home video revenue. So dubbing more stuff like a long-running show like One Piece makes financial sense again, and that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, that is. I think. Yeah, with the manga particularly, what you were talking about with the Shonen Jump back catalog particularly is so exciting because it is so accessible now.
Yeah, I mean, that barrier of entry is gone.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they have the 100 chapter limit per day, which I've not yet hit.
I've never come even close to being in danger of hitting that.
I mean, it's like, I guess you would have to do it all day. I'm like trying to think.
You would literally have to just, get up at 7 or 8 in the morning and then read manga until 5 or 6 at night with 1 20-minute break for lunch. And that's not how I read manga. I read it before I go to bed. And, One Piece has been keeping me up late lately, but not that late.
Yeah, I mean, I know when I was originally catching up with the manga, I definitely had some late nights reading. But it's really cool that at least there's a limit. That's probably a good thing. It's like that Netflix thing that comes up. Are you sure you want to keep going? You've been doing this for 10 hours.
Pop-up window that literally just says, "Is anyone in the room?"
Well,
Steve, Alex,
Yeah, I think. Well, I would unless you guys have anything else.
I mean, I could go on for a while. I feel like, but
I was gonna say we're probably running out of time. Do we have we have a couple more minutes, Zach? Is that you can always edit that part out, I guess. Okay, cool. Yeah, I
could edit whatever I want to edit.
Oh, jeez, big boy pants.
Oh no.
Well, let's see, Zach. What's your social security number? No, kidding. I think it's definitely exciting time to be a fan of the weeb,
and I'm actually going to interject here because I'm looking over some notes that I took before we started talking.
Please.
And I was wondering, did you want to address any possible shortcomings with One Piece? Do you think there's issues with the material that are worth discussing?
No, please address shortcomings.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I caught from social media buzz over the years was that Oda's treatment of female characters wasn't always great, and I will say that it's disappointing that at least where I am in the story, like about 5 or 10 chapters into Whole Cake Island, it's disappointing to me that Oda's largely resorted to using Nami and Robin as eye candy. I don't think he's disrespecting these characters, but I think he kind of has a hard time thinking of things for them to do.
It sucks. We this is something that we kind of struggle with. Yeah.
Okay.
Like Robin has one of the most OP powers in the entire series, and she is like criminally underutilized. She was used way better, I think, as a villain than she has been as a hero in terms of battle prowess.
I think Oda's also gotten somehow worse at doing that. I think Dressrosa's a pretty good example of that. When I read those early volumes and early chapters of One Piece, I think he knows exactly how to utilize all of those characters, female and male characters, a lot better. Not perfectly, but a lot better. Recently, that's definitely a discussion that comes up a lot.
Dare I say it? Go ahead, Mike.
For me, one of the serious strengths is how Oda can take these really broad character archetypes and make these wonderfully human characters out of them. And I hope he doesn't lose sight of that with Robin and Nami. I feel like also what's at work there is he's taking feedback from editorial and from his fans about what they would like to see a little too close to heart.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I mean, I think the editors definitely have some sort of say, and his editors are usually somewhere between the ages of like 18 and 25. So that may influence what kind of material they were like asking more for. Steve, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I think it was something about Robin, but I don't think it's necessary. Well, I was just saying, I was just watching some of the Davy Back fight stuff in the anime the other night, and a lot of that's filler. And
Yep.
they seem to know what to do with her. They like let her use her powers like several times in interesting ways, and it's like, yeah, Robin's a lot of untapped potential.
And her power is so inventive and weird too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and her personality is great in all aspects of it. So
yeah, I mean, it's well, like early on in the character's arcs, like, you know, Robin has that great "I want to live" speech. And, you know, Nami is introduced as this character who kind of has to betray her friends to survive. And, you know, once those story arcs were complete, it's like he couldn't really think of what to do with these characters. And I hope he gets back on track, basically. It's like I'm happy to see them regardless, but
yeah. I mean, to be fair, also, Nami and Robin, those two moments you've mentioned, Nami when Luffy puts the hat on her, and Robin when she, you know, finally has the will to live there, are usually regarded as like the two most powerful moments in the series.
That's true.
From fans.
And I'm thinking back. Yeah. I'm definitely thinking back, and it's just like, on the other hand, I think of like Zolo, and it's like he doesn't have a whole lot of backstory going on.
That's true.
In terms of these big, powerful character moments, you know?
Yeah.
So he's got the one, you know, after he fights Mihawk, but and he's got a couple others too. Like
I think of the first Mihawk fight where he just refuses to go down as kind of his defining moment.
Right, and when he absorbs all of Luffy's pain from Bartholomew Kuma at the end of Thriller Bark, that's a good one too. Like Zoro has these really good moments, but they're not they're of a different kind of caliber. I think they're usually in response to his devotion to his captain, which I think is interesting.
Yeah,
because sometimes you forget that this is a pirate story.
And that he wasn't always devoted to the idea of becoming a pirate crewman. You know?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's I think Zoro's evolution as a character has been a little subtle in that regard, and Zoro's one of those characters that I don't think really needs a larger backstory than he has.
Yeah, he's not a backstory guy, but maybe he doesn't need that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going into Whole Cake Island, so there's going to be some Sanji stuff that's going to be, Sanji's going to have a little bit of a little bit more of a fleshed out.
If you can't tell by this point, even.
Oh yeah, that's already become very obvious where I am in the narrative, and that's cool too.
Yeah, but I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I can tell you if you didn't dig Dressrosa, then I think you're really going to like Whole Cake Island a lot.
I think he changes up the narrative a lot more than I think he does usually, because Dressrosa was kind of like Alabasta, but a little longer and different.
I mean, Dressrosa certainly wasn't bad. I felt like it just kind of kept going on and on and on and on.
Yes. That's how we felt going weekly with it. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I could not imagine going through Dressrosa weekly. That must have been a wild ride.
It was like 2 years. It was like a 2 year. It was a 2 year thing.
I know. It was
half
of. It was half of the episodes at some point. Whenever Dressrosa finished, it was more than half of the episodes we had recorded had something to do with Dressrosa, I think, with the anime and the manga combined. I mean, it made us as a podcast not love that arc a lot, even though it has a huge fan base, because, I'm sure, when you read through it, it's a much better arc, but it goes on.
Yeah. But Oda's shortcomings, I think, it's it is disappointing sometimes. But at the end of the day, I usually just think to myself, I don't know if I would be able to write and draw something every week like this. It'd be tough. And he's already juggling like so many characters. I don't know.
Yep. And you realize he's probably got several assistants, but still, Jesus.
He does, yeah. It's a lot.
Barely ever take a week off and just go and go and go for 20 years now. 20 plus years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
We know when to call Oda out on his BS, but it also is informing of how much we love One Piece and want it to succeed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think we're running. I think we're about have to wrap it up. But Mike, we'd love to have you back on the show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm honored that you asked me on. I'm not really a podcast guy. I don't listen I haven't listened to a lot of these episodes, I must confess, but I've certainly experienced your works in non-podcast form, and I know that you guys are hitting the 10-year mark, right?
We just did. Yeah.
yeah.
May.
Wow,
This past year.
that's a hell of an achievement, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I mean, I know you. I've seen you around, and also I've listened to Ancast for a while. So it's yeah, it's good. It's good to have you on. And I just didn't know. I didn't know until you started posting it that you were, getting back into One Piece. And when I heard you were in the 800s, I'm like, I should probably ask him to come on at this point.
It was a slow burn at first, but yeah, now I'm almost caught up, and I think it's going to happen.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
and when you catch up, we'll have you on for a regular episode. I don't expect you to have listened to any. I mean, the problem is it's kind of, we tell people when you get to the end of the journey, we'll be here, and you have 600 episodes of us to listen to after. If you don't have enough, have enough.
All right.
Well, before we go, if you have any plugs, Mike, that you'd want to,
It's really just what I mentioned at the beginning of our talk. Like I said, I've got the column on Anime News Network, and I've my latest project for Discotech is Giant Robo, which the street date for that is December 24th. So Merry Christmas!
Oh yeah.
I can say that certain anime retailers that have the right stuff will probably ship that out to you earlier if you order it from them.
Yep.
Sorry.
Why have I never heard that joke before?
Oh yeah, I know, right?
It's pretty good.
I know Ed, who is not here, is a huge Giant Robo fan, and I'm definitely going to give that a watch when it comes out in December.
It's one of the greatest anime ever made, in my humble opinion. And I contributed a couple of 100 pages of art galleries from my personal stash of production artwork, and also did 4,500 words of liner notes. So
wow,
we beefed that thing up considerably. It's got the whole series and tons of extras. So I hope anyone curious about the history of anime checks that one out.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, 100%. That's that, and man, that's a ringing endorsement if I've ever heard one. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on, and I guess we will get on to our next segment.
All right, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah,
thanks.
Hey everybody, welcome to Romance Dawn, the segment of the show where we talk to a friend, new and old, or old, doesn't matter, a friend of ours, a special guest, what have you, about their experience with the show and manga we all know and love called One Piece, their weeb origins, so to speak. Zach and Steve are with me again. Say hello, boys.
Hey.
Hello, boys.
I knew you were going to do that.
And our guest for this week is David Brothers. David, welcome.
How's it going?
Oh, can't complain. David, before we formally begin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is David Brothers. I work as an editor at Viz Media on a bunch of different manga, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Hell's Paradise, stuff like that. And before that, I worked at Image Comics as branding manager. And before that, I was a comics blogger, which was kind of where I discovered and started to sing the praises of One Piece.
Pretty awesome. So
yeah, it's a nice life.
Yeah, man, you worked for Image. That's pretty rad. So in that case, I guess let's. I like to ask our guests about their weeb origins, but in this case, I'd also like to ask you about your comic origins as well. If you've got like an origin story there too, like how you got into comics.
Yeah, basically, so I was born in like '83, so like I was too young for Dark Phoenix and like Dark Knight Returns and all that stuff. Yeah. But I was the right age for like the Image Revolution and like Todd McFarlane and all those guys. Mm-hmm. So my first comic actually was like the second appearance of Venom or something like that, where like he fights Black Cat and like Spider-Man is gonna get evicted from his apartment and all this crazy stuff. Yeah. But it really made an impression, and I got into X-Men after that. I was always like a Marvel kid when I was younger. But there was something about comics where I was just like, even with video games becoming like extremely awesome, even with movies like Jurassic Park looking amazing, like comics were always like the coolest medium, like my favorite storytelling medium. So I just stuck with it for that reason.
All right. Yeah. I'm a little younger than you by a couple years. I was born in '85, and I feel like I don't know. It's just me, but I think a lot of people criticize the Spider-Man clone saga a little too much. I was I grew up on
That was a hard time, but there's a lot. Like the costume design was so good.
Yeah.
Like all those Mark Bagley drawings.
Yeah, I like Bagley was one of my like big comic book inspirations. Like growing up in terms of his art and I also loved Scarlet Spider's design. Like it's super 90s and I don't know.
Yeah, it's like weirdly classic because of that, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, like inside comics, I kind of got into anime around the same time, like long before I knew like manga was a thing. I didn't know like Japanese comics were a thing.
Yeah.
But I saw like Fist of the North Star and Akira and Vampire Hunter D at like a very young age.
Oh man,
and I was so excited for that. Yeah.
That last one in particular. It's a
yeah, you know, I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old, and like my mind was blown because I basically went from like GI Joe to this.
Wow.
You know,
this is
gonna
what
say
G.I. Joe
literally.
should look like.
Yeah. But yeah, there's
Less
just something
lasers.
about like the words and pictures, like it just really does it for me.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I love those two things in tandem. Well, in that case, how did you stumble into One Piece? And when?
It was mostly by accident. I think like it came out, and you know, people talk like the 4 Kids dub and that kind of thing. That was probably my first exposure. And it didn't really take. Like I felt like I was a little bit too old for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had friends who kept watching, like when they started releasing like the subtitled editions down the line. They were like, no, like you got to come back to it. It's really good. And then I finally started watching it. I think the Skypiea arc was going on, and I was like, oh wait, like this is really, really good. And I basically went from watching it to reading it over the span of like a month. And I think Viz was doing, you could buy like 3 manga for the price of 2 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it basically ruined my wallet for like 6 months because all I was doing was buying One Piece. Because
You're
it
in good
was
company.
Yeah, like they got me, and now I work there. So like now I'm part of the gang. But there's just something that was so pleasant about early One Piece, where I was like, oh, this is like a good book. And then around volume 9, when Nami asked Luffy for help, I'm like, oh, this book's gonna make me cry every 6 volumes. And like I've loved it ever since. I wrote a bunch of essays about it when I was a comics blogger, just on how they approach different things. Like the fight with King Wapol, I thought was really well done, where they cut away from the punch for the flashback to justify the punch.
Yeah,
and then they cut back to the punch, and you're like, oh yeah, this guy had this coming. Like this is perfect.
I go back to that one all the time. I love that's such a well done flashback too.
Yeah, and it's almost like it's like a really stirring emotional flashback in the service of like a really dumb joke. I think it like that's kind of what Oda sells at, is kind of marrying like like the melodrama with like the 14-year-old sense of humor.
Good way of putting that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you have a favorite? Flashback? All right.
Oh man, actually, I think Nico Robin's flashback was really. I mean, there's yet another one, where you cry at the end of it, but there was so much kind of writing on her flashback, where you're finding out why she is the way she is. At the same time, in the modern day, like the modern part of the narrative, like she's kind of under. I think it was during like Water 7 and the judging arc. There was just it was the context, I guess, made it so fraught with emotion that I couldn't help but love that one. And also, like the idea of an island of scholars is kind of a cool thing.
Yeah,
that's true.
I feel like One Piece is. I don't know if there's something within One Piece, they usually have their own island.
Yeah,
but yeah. That arc is like a lot of people. that I think that is a good arc for speculation and stuff like that, just because the island of the scholars and the unnamed country and there's a whole lot of like secret lore that still is yet to be uncovered and stuff that has been I guess really unearthed in within that little flashback too. So it's I don't know. I think it's kind of neat how Oda peppers little clues here and there.
Yeah.
It really helps with world building.
Yeah, it's such a dense book too. Like there's like the early chapters, I like to look back at them. They look very like clean, and the pages like aren't very crowded.
Yeah.
But when you get up to like the more modern day, like he's such a better draftsman now that it's almost like reading an entirely different book.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that like that he churns out the work that he does. I mean, he has assistants as well, but it's still pretty nuts.
Yeah.
When you look at how beautifully detailed, Ryugu Palace from Fishman Island, that story comes to mind. Are you? How far are you, by the way? I should have asked this ahead of time. So avoid spoilers.
So I'm at the part where they're on the elephant heading for Wano. I think they might have just made the decision for that. It's funny, like when you work on weekly books, you kind of fall behind on reading weekly books.
Yeah. No, we've definitely heard that from folks.
When something's your job, it makes it a lot more difficult to do the thing. When your hobby's your job, it makes it harder to do your hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
Generally, that's
for sure.
Yeah.
It's like kind of the best homework to have, because it's like, oh no, I have to go and read 8 volumes of One Piece. Like my life is so hard. But I'm looking forward to catching up because I've heard a lot about like the new arc. I think the anime's actually passed me at this point, which has not happened in probably 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, the anime is quite past where you are at this point.
Yeah.
What do you think sets One Piece apart from other manga or other series in general? And I mean, feel free, of course, to use your entire comic book background to answer this, because it's
I think a lot of it is the tone. Like shonen comics and shonen manga and superhero manga are they're not equivalent genres, but they kind of play the same role in our respective cultures. Like this is what people think of when we say manga or comic books. But while superhero books have kind of gotten more serious and like every threat's the end of the world, like Spider-Man doesn't worry about rent anymore. He worries about like Galactus.
Yeah.
Shonen manga and like One Piece in particular, they can do very small, like personal stories.
Yeah.
And they can do it in a way that's not like, it can be grim and brutal, but it can also be like really goofy. Mm-hmm. Like Usopp's transformation into Sniper King is one of my most favorite things in any book ever. And, when Hawkeye did it, it was very sad. He's like, oh, I lost my family, blah, blah, blah. Now I'm Ronin. When Usopp does it, it's because he's ashamed, but his way of getting out of that shame is like, again, making like a 14-year-old sense of humor kind of joke. Like he just puts on a mask and everything's good again.
Yeah.
And One Piece walks that line like so well. There's so many fight scenes that have like that one like incredible comedic moment with like, or when Enel realizes like, oh wait, lightning doesn't hurt a rubber man, or Usopp tells Perona like, I'm already the most negative. No one sees those coming, and that makes it a really fun, charming book to read, even when like sad things are happening in the background with Ace or Nico Robin or Nami. Like there's just something bubbly about this book where like it'll make you sad, it'll make you cry, but also like it just feels good to read. And that's sort of even in other books I love a lot. Like I don't really get that feeling. Like it's a different kind of book. Mm-hmm. But One Piece is just all thrill power. Like it just works.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. And do you ever compare it to like the other big 3, like Bleach and Naruto?
So I feel like the big 3 has changed now, right? Because
totally.
Yeah.
I mean, Bleach and Naruto both ended.
Yeah, I'd have to go back in time, but like Bleach and Naruto, in my experience, were way better received here in the U.S. And One Piece it's a completely different comic, to be frank. I mean, it's a shonen series, but it's not really. It's its own weird animal. It doesn't rely so heavily on the tropes that that Dragon Ball helped establish for weekly shonen comics. Whereas I think Bleach and Naruto really kind of leaned into that. Obviously Akira Toriyama's influence is all over One Piece, but I think it can be mainly seen in the art style and how carefree of a character Luffy is, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think that Bleach and Naruto they're closer to superhero kind of storytelling, where like there's this through line, there's this one plot, it's gonna be pretty serious the whole way through.
Yeah.
There's like funny asides, but it's mostly a serious manga.
Mm-hmm.
Both Bleach and Naruto, which I love both of them for different reasons. And I feel like One Piece is almost more of a comedy manga than a drama.
Yeah, I mean,
We've said that here before a bunch of times. Yeah.
Yeah, the ratio of comedy to seriousness is, I think they're sort of about even, but it's
closer to 50-50.
It's very goofy.
Yeah.
And I think it leans heavily on that, and I guess many of the serious moments that rely on how goofy One Piece is sort of a testament to that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the devil fruit powers, like they can be dangerous, but a lot of them are very stupid. So,
Yeah.
and I do love that. Like I love how much Oda leans into the stupidity of his comic, like how dumb like a lot of the stuff that he creates is, and it's fun in that way.
It seems like I think like Naruto in particular kind of dropped its sense of humor. I can't say this for certain because I wasn't keeping up with it, but I think a lot of people tell me that like the Shippuden stuff is just a lot more serious and it's not as comical anymore. And I'm kind of glad at least that Oda has never forgotten that. It's like still like to this day, like we'll still have like just zany, weird, comical bad guys, yet they're also the most despicable people, but they also look ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even the sound effects, like, so I read a bit of the Wano arc just because like we proofread everything in the office. And the sound effects are like the Japanese guitar sound.
Yeah, the shamisen.
Instead of being like the usual doom and, Dawn, like he changes it up just for this story arc. And like, that's such like a goofy, funny thing to do.
Yeah, the Wano story arc has been actually really cool because it feels almost like reading a completely new and different comic.
Yeah.
And I feel like Oda has this really neat agency to, at this point, do whatever he wants. And that's sort of the dream, right? To create something from your mind that has no limits. And being able to just go nuts.
Yeah, definitely. And like he's doing that and he's connecting with people at the same time, which is incredible. Like as a creative person, it's almost like the ultimate goal, you get to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
No,
for sure. You've read My Hero, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. My Hero, I think that is probably the closest manga I think I've ever read to American comics, and it was sort of refreshing in that regard.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, just because a lot of the I don't know it really it sort of made me miss Cape Comics a little bit, but Cape Comics I think have also they've evolved in a different way. It's been a while since I've read a Marvel book, but I think they try to tie a lot of stuff into the movies now, which is a little disappointing because it's for me, I think it's cool. It was cool when the two were separate. Like
the comics were the draw. Like they've always the cool part.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting when you hear the scuttlebutt about the comics industry is dying, but then again, manga is doing. I don't know, manga is probably we're at a weird height right now.
Yeah, it's doing great. And to the comic book, like the My Hero point, especially, I think it's so good because it's like a love letter to superhero comics.
Yeah.
And this is true of One Punch Man as well. Like they could be, like they seem like parodies, but I think they're just funny, like genuine, heartfelt expressions of love for these goofy costumes.
Yeah. No, for sure. Horikoshi, I think, is went on record saying that Spider-Man is his favorite. And I mean,
Yeah, you can totally tell too.
Yeah.
It's so
it's
like
pretty-
Spider-Man is the most manga of Marvel's heroes anyway.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. That's for sure. This is this is a little bit of a mini rant, but I kind of miss when Spider-Man was the face of Marvel.
Yeah, same. That was my era. Like I realized I grew up and I was like, oh, like Spider-Man's not for me anymore. You know, it's for someone else, which is totally cool. Like everyone should get their own Spider-Man.
For sure.
It's kind of a bummer at the same time.
Yeah. No, I feel that. One Piece. One Piece's characters. The cool thing about One Piece's characters is that they're, no matter how like background they are, like even the most background of characters is still like, I don't know, such a wonderfully unique design, and everybody has their own, you know, foibles and personality quirks. What do you have a favorite character, Straw Hat and non-Straw Hat? I think that's a question that I like to ask.
Yes, it's always like pulling teeth because there's so many I like for different reasons. But like at this specific moment in time, I think I like Zolo the most from the Straw Hat crew. Like I love the fact that he can cut so many things through sheer force of will. Is another thing where it's like, this is a dumb joke, but it's really exciting in context. You know, like when he cuts through a mountain or you know, steel or something like that. And his move names are incredible, like super good jokes, really forbidding when they're turned serious. Non-Straw Hat, I'm going to go with Rob Lucci because he's one of the best designs anywhere ever. Like the top hat and the pigeon is just such a good, like, the sense of design is just perfect, I feel.
I'm going to make the bad guy have a top hat and a pigeon.
Yeah.
And the pigeon will have his own cape.
Yeah, and like a little tie too.
That's what makes it especially terrifying.
Yeah. That whole Water 7 arc, I loved, like the architecture, the stuff they were doing with Robin, and especially like the dock workers, you know, Cypher Pole and Undercover.
Yeah.
And Rob Lucci was just such a design, and then it turned into an amazing fight too.
Yeah, that's, I would say that is like, for me, top 3 best movie fights is him versus Lucci. It's and it doesn't get drawn out too much either. It's and it's a super fun. Lucci's a powerhouse, and really that kind of villain that I didn't really that I kind of grew to like and respect. Just because, you know, sometimes you need that just killing machine.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, not every villain needs to be super sympathetic or have any sort of vast ideal. And that's the cool thing about One Piece is that you have all these characters who are, you know, just of all different wakes of life. And that's really a testament to Oda's sense of world building.
Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier that so many of the devil fruit flowers are kind of BS, like Buggy Clown.
Yeah.
It's such a good character. And just his evolution from like young pirate to like shipping magnate and crime boss. Like it's amazing, and you would never see it coming going by his first appearance.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool the way you know, the way you see the evolution of certain characters, you know, in the background, or not even at all. Like I love when characters return.
Yeah.
And it's always a heartening thing for me. So you mentioned Water 7. Would you call that your favorite story arc, or do you have?
I wouldn't have before this moment, but I think the fact that I mentioned it twice in a conversation about favorite stuff means it probably is. Because it's hard to pick a favorite because there's so much, you know, every different arc.
Yeah.
Like Skypiea has, like, they really did a lot with like the characterization and mixing up the cast. All the Halloween stuff with Nico Robin made me cry laughing, where she refuses to get on the robot. She's like, it offends me as a human being or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
But I think Water 7 combines the most of what I love in One Piece.
Yeah, it's got everything. It perfectly encapsulates what makes One Piece great. I think it's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of neat because it you know, it follows Skypiea, and like that triple threat of Skypiea, Davy Back, and Water 7. Like those three are like just a bing bang boom of what make One Piece great. You have this high flying pirate adventure, then you have a really short and sweet, just fun, fun almost gag arc.
Yeah.
With some really great really great character designs, and then you have Water 7, which is this sweeping epic story that has these heartfelt moments. It's kind of awesome that entire section. I feel like that's a I usually tell people never skip anything in One Piece because I've heard people say skip Skypiea because it has no relevance to the main story. And
oh, no way.
like, well, why are you reading One Piece?
Yeah.
Don't you
I just need to get to the end. It ends someday, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
when
this
people
week's
ask,
last chapter.
Yeah.
or when people ask like, "Oh, where's a good place to start?" And I'll say chapter 1.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. Like, I feel like it starts good. I think it gets great with volume 9. Like, that's where I'm like, this is one to, hang on for dear life.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely points where it's like, if it doesn't hook you at this point, it probably should have, but
Yeah.
yeah,
different strokes.
Yeah. No. Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. What would you say is like your favorite thing about One Piece? Like what drives you to love this series?
I think the friendships. It's like a super basic answer for shonen manga, but I always say like I turned 30 and suddenly having friends became the most important thing in the world to me.
Yeah.
And One Piece kills it on that front. There are so many characters who become friends, like Luffy and Bon Clay is an incredible friendship. The ups and downs that Luffy and Usopp go through, Zolo and Sanji like kind of being friends but not really. There's just such an interesting and kind of like nuanced depictions of friendships that aren't just like we're going to study like toxic friendships or like positive ones. It's like no, there's like all kinds of friends in here.
The villains are the ones usually who have the more toxic friendships.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, sometimes like Buggy and Bon Clay both kind of turn that around.
Yeah.
Or at least they were made more complex, by way of flashbacks or chapter art. But if not the friendships, I think definitely the chapter art. Like I love the world building that he does, even when it's just like one panel a week,
Mm-hmm.
Showing like what happened to King Wapol after Drum Island, or just like checking in on all these amazing characters that he's created over the last 900 chapters. Like it's just impressive, and it's so good, and that makes it even more impressive.
I think we're awful spoiled. One Piece fans in general, I think, are just very, very spoiled when it comes to the content that we get, just because it's a lot. It's a lot, and I don't know.
That's why fans are always expecting way too much every week.
Yeah,
I feel like. Us included sometimes too, but yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
But
it's so rewarding to just sit with it and kind of let One Piece be what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Because I've just been surprised so many different times.
So I'll ask on that note, since we're too spoiled, what do you wish One Piece could improve? What do you think it could most improve upon, or what is the thing that still sticks out to you as something that annoys you about One Piece?
That's tough. Maybe how often some of the cast members show up again. Like I love Tashigi, and it's tough being a Tashigi fan sometimes because you might get one or two pieces of chapter art a year at best. But like I think that's sort of like there's so many great characters. I just want to see more of all of them, which isn't really feasible.
It's an embarrassment of riches kind of thing.
Yeah. Because even then, like the thing that annoys me the most is like I just want more of it.
Mm-hmm.
But like pacing wise, I feel like it's good. The art's always getting better, which is something else that I really, really love about this series. But I think I would just like to see my favorites a little more often. It's my very selfish answer.
Yeah, I mean I think there's a wealth of characters in One Piece that I would love to read a spin-off manga of, and just too many to list at this point.
Even just a little bit with Zolo, Mihawk, and Perona training.
Yeah.
Hey, there's 2 years worth of stories there, and I assume,
It's a sitcom right there. That's a Yonkoma, like a 4-panel.
100%.
Yeah, that's waiting to happen.
Yeah, I'm surprised that hasn't been made.
I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah, one day.
Pixiv.net, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wealth of fan art. How are we on time, Zach?
Yeah, well, I mean, we could wrap up. It's been around a half hour.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to talk about, David, or
plug?
Not. I guess I'll plug JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Diamond is Unbreakable.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the manga that I work on, and it's kind of turned into my baby. It's one of the first projects I've had, like from volume 1 all the way through the end. And it's one of my favorite arcs of JoJo, and I feel like we're doing a really good job on it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of it. Like, it comes out every couple of months, 2-in-1 hardcover, and like, if you like the anime, like the JoJo's manga, it's like One Piece, where it's just on a whole other level.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the vault now, right? The Shonen
Yeah, you
vault?
can actually read it on the website in the app. I think the first 30-something chapters are up.
I mean, I think from the anime JoJo's, that was definitely, I think that was my favorite. So I'm definitely I need to go and read that series. That's exciting. Yeah,
his drawings are so good in this arc too. Like, it's it's like Stardust Crusaders is where JoJo's became like JoJo's.
Yeah.
Like, is Unbreakable is where he like figured out like how to make it perfect.
Sure.
I'm excited for that. Yeah.
Part 4 is my favorite.
Yeah.
Good choice to start working on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we go, I guess if you had to sell One Piece to somebody, like if somebody had never read One Piece before, or better yet, a Cape Comics reader, if they had never read One Piece before, how would you sell it?
I'd sell it as it's Fast and the Furious, but with teenage pirates. But it's all about friendship instead of family.
I love that.
Oh, God.
That's great.
Yeah, it is great.
It does remind me of one time I just posted a picture of the cast of Fast and Furious and just wrote Nakama below it.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Even though I have not seen those movies, I think I get a sense.
Yeah, they share like a sense of humor and like a high level of action, you know? Like, stuff explodes in Fast and the Furious. Like, if you like that, like, One Piece has all the fighting you can handle.
Yeah.
This is really making me feel kind of introspective about how I've decided to podcast. I have a Fast and the Furious manga podcast. It's only about Fast and the Furious.
I mean, I now I just want to watch Fast 5 again, talking about it.
Yeah, same.
Well, David, thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you have a Twitter handle where people can follow you, or?
Yeah, I'm at Hermanos on Twitter. It's Spanish for brothers, HERMANOS. And that's where you can find me. I'll link, like stuff that I read or like, and a lot of it's just me talking about what comic books I read that week.
Cool. Well, that's
awesome.
Well, we'd like to have you back on the show at some point once you've
once I've caught up.
Caught up, yeah. You're not too far, and you're in for some really great stuff now. So
yeah,
awesome. I'm stoked.
Yeah, please be stoked. Right.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool, thank you.
And with that, we'll get into our next segment, Zach.
Hey everybody, this is Steven, and I'm recording this solo segment for you all this week since there's no manga chapter. And I was kind of inspired to do this by some of the reveal, or one specific reveal in last week's chapter about the origins of Orochi that, it inspired me to suggest doing a little kind of Japanese history segment for you here. Since there are definitely some aspects of Wano that are based on certainly periods in Japanese history, but also famous figures. And I thought it would be worthwhile to talk about some of those and kind of shed some light on where he is getting some of his ideas. Now, what I'm going to give you here is a very brief, a very condensed kind of summary of a certain period in Japanese history, which is the end of the Sengoku era, or the Warring States period. And I just want to give a caveat before I get into this stuff that, as you'll see, like the interesting thing about how Oda uses the influences or the motifs of some of these people and events is not like it very clearly does not track one-to-one with what he's doing in the story. This is very much like he's taking bits and pieces here and there. And so it's not really meant to, it's not like an allegory or anything like that. It's not like, hey, this character is this, and therefore this other character is going to do that. And it's because he's mirroring this event that happens. Obviously, Oda is just kind of repurposing them and putting them into his own world and playing around with them. But it's meant to, like, as a Japanese reader, you're kind of meant to have your synapses firing like, oh, I recognize that. Oh, interesting. That's kind of like this person from history. So I am going to, let's go through some of this historical stuff. So I wanted to talk about like I said, the end of the Sengoku period, or the Warring States era. And specifically about the three principal figures of this era, who are also known as the three great unifiers in English. And so the Sengoku era is a period that starts around, I would say, about 1400-ish or so, and ends in the late 1500s, early 1600s. And this period is basically, it's called the Warring States period because it follows the collapse of one, relatively stable, period of rule by a certain clan, and its power is very decentralized during this time. So you just have a bunch of local lords who are constantly warring with each other, and there's no stability. There's just a lot of armies marching around and fighting as their military fortunes shift, and so it's a very chaotic time. And near the end of this period, when it finally looks like there's going to be a victor, you have the first of the great unifiers is a guy named Oda Nobunaga, and he doesn't technically gain full control over Japan, or at least of Honshu, like the sort of the centralized area of Japan, but he is like he's on the cusp of getting there. His fortunes are ascendant. He's an extremely ambitious guy, and his main rivals are they're having their own kind of political weakness, whether that's stuff like the patriarch of the clan dies and the heir isn't quite ready yet, or is too young, or there's too many claims, and so there's internal squabbling, or their military power is sapped. There are various reasons why his other rivals were not able to compete. But Oda Nobunaga is basically he's going to be the ruler of Japan, given a little bit more time. And Oda Nobunaga is a very interesting character. The thing about all these three guys that I'm going to talk about is they have, depending on the source and the context, whether it's a more dry history or a sort of semi-fictionalized version of them, is that their characters, their portrayal as people really kind of depends on who is talking and what the purpose of their story is. Obviously, history itself is a lot more complicated than a story, because in a story you kind of need to know who am I supposed to identify with, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And in real life, it's much more complicated, of course. Oda Nobunaga he's a really interesting guy because he's extremely ambitious. Like, he has a mind for military strategy. This is coming at a time in the late 1500s when Japan was getting steadily more and more contact with missionaries and people from Europe. And so this is at a time when there were steadily more use of firearms in Japan and things like that. Nobunaga was very fascinated with European culture. They say it's apocryphal, but supposedly he was the very first person in Japan to ever wear European clothes, which I don't know. I guess that would be like a tunic or something. But he was very interested with overseas culture, and he was the kind of guy who was like, all right, once I conquer first Japan, then the world. Like, he was very set on invading Korea and China, as another part of that long history of enmity between these cultures. And he basically was on the precipice of conquering Japan. Until there's an incident that happens with him called the Honnoji incident, and so basically what the situation here is that Oda had sent his allies, like his generals who were under his lead, to defeat his remaining rivals. Like, he had them going off to the separate regions. And victory was basically assured. They just had to go out and actually, finish the fight. And he and his son, I believe, were at a temple in Kyoto called Honnoji. And at this time, so he had sent out his troops, including another figure whom I'm going to talk about in a bit, called Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and he had sent a third general. He had told a general named by the name of Akechi Mitsuhide to go and back up Toyotomi Hideyoshi in his battle. And at the time, Akechi he had his forces in the area. He was kind of like the guy with with all of his troops stationed around there. And he basically saw an opportunity here where Oda is like, okay, Nobunaga, his forces are out and about. He's kind of vulnerable here. And so he basically commits an act of treachery. He turns on Nobunaga. His forces surround Honnoji Temple, and he doesn't kill him directly, but he says, all right, I'm going to give you can commit ritual suicide to, preserve your honor and whatnot. But that's basically what he does. He has Nobunaga trapped, and he forces him to kill himself. And those are that's the facts of what we know about that. There's a lot of theories and conspiracy theories and various angles. No one really knows exactly why Akechi turned on him. There's a number of different angles that could be used to describe it. Some people might say that he was, it was just purely a power play. He was like, this is my shot. I can take him down, and then I'll be the guy in control. Some people said that he was loyal, but that he thought, Nobunaga was maybe going a bit power crazy, or that he posed a threat, and that it was for the good of the nation that he got rid of him. Other people say that it was actually Hideyoshi, who again I'm going to talk about in a second, who sort of led him astray, because Hideyoshi is known as a very scheming and clever kind of guy, that he may have kind of set this all up. But basically, in the aftermath of Nobunaga's death, Toyotomi Hideyoshi kind of comes back, and he ends up fighting Akechi, the Akechi clan in battle, and he destroys Mitsuhide in battle, and that's kind of that is the end of that. Now, Toyotomi Hideyoshi is another really fascinating guy. This is the second of the three great unifiers, and he is he interestingly, he comes from completely common heritage. He was basically the son of a like a foot soldier, not some samurai clan, not the heir of some big family. He basically made his place in the world through sheer ambition and drive. He found himself in Oda Nobunaga's command, and like he was basically his sandal bearer, which is, he is a soldier. Like, it's not a strictly a complete servant role, but it's basically a glorified soldier where, yes, he gets to be kind of like a squire type figure for Oda Nobunaga in his court. And there are lots of stories about how like he supposedly, as the sandal bearer, he's supposed to, carry the sandals around so that when he's ready to go, he presents them to his lord, and he would go the extra mile. He would in the cold winter nights, he would put the sandals like inside like the backside of his kimono and warm them up, so that this was not something that was normally done. But he was like, I'm going to do this because this is going to impress Nobunaga. It's going to keep his sandals warm so that when he puts them on, they're nice and comfy on his feet. And like that was a sign of of ambition on his part that Nobunaga really admired. And so he promoted him, and eventually Hideyoshi became kind of a general of his own, and he was entrusted with forces, and he became a pivotal part of Nobunaga's armies. And so he was, like I said before, he was out performing a military campaign for Nobunaga when the Honnoji incident happened, and he comes back, destroys Akechi. And then and then it's like, oh, well, it's all set up for Hideyoshi. He's the one in prime position now. And he basically kind of swoops in to the void, and he takes over, and he is essentially the Lord Regent of Japan. This is before the use of the term shogun in the way that I'm going to mention in a second. But Hideyoshi is basically he's not the king, but he's essentially, that's what he is. He helps enact a bunch of reforms and things that Nobunaga had started working on. This is a period of a lot of change in Japanese society, where for example, Hideyoshi, he kind of ratifies, or he strictly declares like what the class system in Japan should be, because prior to this, you had samurai who were warriors, are the ones who fought, and then you had farmers who were below them. But because of the chaos of the Sengoku era, this Warring States era, things were not stable. You had situations where, like the food supply might not be entirely safe. And, you had warlords and bandits and all these figures roaming. It's a very dangerous time for the common people. And so sometimes the farmers would have to pick up weapons and fight. And sometimes the samurai would have no choice but to work the fields to ensure that, there was enough labor to raise the rice and the crops and stuff. So it was basically what Hideyoshi says is, no, we're going to, I'm going to issue these edicts that farmers cannot use any weapons. They have to be pacified, and the samurai are always going to be above them. And so it sets up this very hierarchical system. It's also a time where the art of the tea ceremony is really brought to the forefront among the kind of the noble classes, the great samurai leaders. That becomes like a very fashionable thing to do, and so a lot of the the chakai, like the formal tea ceremonial stuff, kind of gets solidified in this era. There's a famous monk by the name of Sen Norikyu, who was pretty much the father of kind of our modern understanding of that stuff, and he was a principal figure during this time, and knew all of these great generals and such. Another very interesting character. So Hideyoshi, he's doing this stuff. He's kind of putting his control, putting his fingerprints all over the nation of Japan, and kind of doing his best to unify the nation and to make his mark on it. And eventually he dies of old age, of natural causes. But the problem for him is that his heir, his son, is only like 5 years old at the time. So his claim is not super strong yet. And so he has his loyalists, the Toyotomi loyalists, who are on his side. But this is at the point where the third great unifier comes in, and that is Tokugawa Ieyasu. And he is kind of another very shrewd guy, and was particularly known for being very clever about his choices of allies and who he chose to dedicate his cause to. Obviously, with all of these warring factions and clans and whatnot, it was not necessarily super rare for these major clans to shift alliances depending on who was ascendant, who was really coming into power, and whatnot. So he was originally Tokugawa was originally aligned with Nobunaga, and then he worked under Toyotomi, but he saw his shot when this kind of weakness after Hideyoshi's death became apparent. And that's when he marshaled his forces and went to war yet again. And this is right around 1600 or so. And there was this conflict was punctured by a very famous battle, one of the most famous battles in Japan, which if you've been, if you have played enough games or, read enough manga, watched enough anime, you may have heard of this before if you're not already a student of Japanese history. And that is called the Battle of Sekigahara. And that is a battle between Tokugawa Ieyasu and the Toyotomi loyalists. And it's not the end of the battle, but it is kind of like a Gettysburg battle. It's the one where the tides really shifted, and because Tokugawa was victorious, he ends up ultimately winning. He conquers the rest of Toyotomi's his holdings and his allies, and he basically becomes the third great unifier. He conquers all of Japan, and he sets up the Tokugawa shogunate, which is becomes the dominant ruling faction of Japan for the next couple centuries until the mid to late 1800s, when the Meiji Restoration happens, and all of that stuff that you may remember from Rurouni Kenshin and other series like that. So Ieyasu, he's obviously a great military leader, and his situation is such that it's stable enough that it was able to maintain control at the end of his lifespan, when the shogunate itself really becomes solidified is when a lot of the policies that helped him, that helped the shogunate stay in power, are kind of completed, such as the what they call the Sankin Kotai policy, which was actually initially started by Hideyoshi. But that is the policy of basically saying to all the daimyo, all the local lords from around Japan, okay, you have your territory, but it's sort of like senators or congressmen. It's like, okay, you have your home territory, and you can use your your local resources and have your own forces, but you have to also maintain a residence here in the capital. And that's going to be very expensive for you, so you can't marshal too much strength in your own territory. And also, this is where your wife and your heirs, your children, have to stay. So they're basically political hostages, but it ensures that the daimyo stay loyal. They can't, try to make power plays of their own. And that is that kind of iron fist policy helps keep Japan stable and allows for a lot more advancement, and there's not as much chaos with the for the peasants and so on. So the society kind of flourishes a bit more during the Tokugawa shogunate. It's also the period when the Sakoku policy, the closed nation policy, becomes finalized. That was something that Hideyoshi, I think, probably started more, was cracking down on the influences of outside nations, of the missionaries. During that period, there was a lot of there was a lot of proselytizing for the Jesuits, the Christian missionaries who were bringing that to Japan, and there were a lot of people who were swayed by those arguments, and so there was a crackdown on that. You couldn't have Christian relics, and so there were people who would hold to that faith, but they would have to do it in secret. So the Sakoku policy was kind of a development of that, trying to prevent outside influences from changing anything in the nation, and allowing the shogun to maintain full sort of political and cultural control. Now that I've talked about all three of these mangas, you can see where some of these figures, whether it's their name or their personality, have been appropriated by Oda in the story of Wano. Obviously, Yasuie, Ieyasu, that's a very clear, a nod to that figure by Oda. You could say that Yasuie, the character, maybe like some of his hardline elements match up with some portraits of Tokugawa Ieyasu, the character. You could also definitely say this was one of the reasons that I wanted to do this little segment, that Orochi being revealed as as starting off as a servant of Yasuie, and then we know him, obviously rising through the ranks and taking control of the country, is definitely similar to Toyotomi Hideyoshi's rise to power from humble origins. Obviously, Orochi has to be a villain for this stories, but it may not be ultimately fair to say that that's a realistic portrayal of who Hideyoshi, the real life figure, was. But some of the I guess the character arc parallels are interesting, you could maybe say that Oda Nobunaga was similar, perhaps, to the Kozuki clan. Not that that the Oda clan was the unifying force. Of course, it was Nobunaga who kind of gained control, but as a there might be elements of Nobunaga's interest in overseas culture and such that do kind of echo some of Oden's character, where he wants to be free. He doesn't want to be bogged down by the rules and such of the Wano government. But that's all, that's obviously not all one-to-one with what the actual historical facts are. So it's more just kind of interesting to see how Oda has taken some of these elements and repurposed them here and there to tell his story of Wano, which he's been on record as saying that he doesn't. I believe it was in one of the color walks where he said he doesn't intentionally put messages into his story, or like I don't know, morals or something into his story. It's not like like I said at the start, he's not doing allegories where he's saying, all right, I'm gonna put this story together to send a political message to people to wake up to, this is expressing my personal views. Obviously, with the way that he writes his story, anyone who writes stories is whether they intend to or not, is imparting something of their own views into it. And so, you could argue whether or not that's necessarily fair to say, or whether or not he has, maybe subsequently after saying that he may have, written some story arcs that were taking a little bit more of a real world influence. But, in terms of kind of setting up what he thinks would be a cool dramatic story, and then finding a kind of a moral core to that story, which in the case of Wano would be about about freedom, personal freedom, and not being tied down by things just for the sake of being tied down by them. I think that seems to be the central message of Oden's character in Wano, and obviously we will see how he further expresses that opinion as the flashback continues to develop, which will be interesting to see. And I'm curious to see if there will be more little historical parallels and nods and things that Oda feels are interesting enough to incorporate into the story. We'll find out. I will be on the lookout for those things, and if I find something else that's interesting to bring up, maybe I will do something like this again. We will see. But at any rate, that's all from me for now. So let's continue on with the next segment.
This is the Anime Recap for episode 909, Mysterious Grave Markers, a reunion at the ruins of Odin Castle. I'm your host Sam, and today with me once again, we have Ed. Just kidding, we have Jill.
Oh, God. Hello. I'm not Ed, but I am here, so there's that at least.
Yes, so the title card this week begins at 3 minutes and 14 seconds. We're figuring out what happened at Odin Castle and why there were those gravestones at the end of last week's episode. And Luffy's pestering Zoro and Law to tell him the secrets of what's going on, but they're actually withholding. If they want to keep the suspense going, they've got like actual showmanship.
Yeah, it's kind of funny considering Law and Zoro tend to be pretty blunt, but in this case, they just kind of want to surprise Luffy a bit.
Yeah. And as they are riding on Komachio towards the castle through the woods, they're being approached by some kind of monster chasing them. And that's when Zoro decides to hop off and kind of protect the crew's back and fight this like giant tiger thing, which is different than what happened in the manga, where Zoro just got lost between chapters for no reason.
Yeah, I was trying to, because I didn't remember this in the manga, and I was just like, all right, we're just gonna throw in a Pokemon, I guess.
They kind of describe the tiger as being like an assassin from Orochi or something because it's got a sword.
I don't think they realized it was a tiger. Like, even though it's pretty obvious to us watching it, like I think Kiku was like, "Oh, is an assassin?" And no, it's just like a weird animal with a sword.
Even Zoro calls it the assassin. Zoro has a moment with the tiger where he's like, he sees the sword and he's like, man.
I like seeing their two eyes, both with the scar. So I was like,
they both
the Zoro tiger.
Yeah. So that brings us to the flower capital, where there is just kind of a random classroom scene where there's this kind of this lilac-haired woman teaching a class of children about the subtitles are not very clear about what these words mean. She's talking about Sakoku, which is a closed nation in Stephen's translation, and Kaikoku, which is open nation. And she's kind of quizzing the children on what these terms mean, and it's very, very propaganda, where all the kids are very eager to answer the pro Orochi questions. And another embellishment. There's a number of anime specific embellishments this week, like this old man who kind of listens in on the classroom. He's like sweeping outside, and he's overhearing, and he's like, "Oh, this country, the children are just buying all these lies."
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty good transition into it, because otherwise it would have just been like, here's a classroom. So I kind of...
Yeah, and we've got we got somebody from the older generation who remembers how things were once upon a time compared to how they are now, versus the children who have only grown up knowing Orochi's propaganda.
Yeah, I really liked the I thought that whole scene was really well done, but I did like it when she was talking about like, oh, we live in this peaceful Wano, and then it has like the really quick flashbacks to everything that's going on outside of the flower capital. I thought that was good.
Yeah, you see all the poisoned water. You see the Okobore town people crying and starving and stuff. And there's also a name drop of the Akazaya 9, which they have an ink drawing of Kinemon. in their textbooks.
Oh, he's in a textbook.
And then we move on to, we meet Napping Kyoshiro, who his namesake actually kind of gets... We understand his namesake in this scene in a way that we don't in the manga, where like in the middle of talking, he just like Ace and his narcolepsy, he just falls asleep.
Great. I love that apparently this is something he does enough that it is his moniker, and I feel that really hard.
Yeah. And this is the scene where Geisha Robin Orobi is performing, and she's overhearing Kyoshiro talking to one of his goonies, and they're basically just talking about how Orochi is a dum-dum, and how he believes this legend that Odin's wife told 20 years ago before they killed them all in a fire. And Odin's wife said something like, "You are the moon unaware of the dawn. May your purpose be fulfilled, and cast 9 shadows on the night woven of 20 years, and you shall know the brilliance of the dawn." And Kyoshiro goes on to explain that Orochi has interpreted that as 20 years from now, 9 samurai will appear, aka the Akazaya 9 will appear and kill you. And that was his motivation to burn Odin Castle down and kill them all.
Of course, that would never happen. So clearly Orochi is just a scaredy cat.
So the Luffy and Law are appearing, and Kiku are appearing at Odin Castle. And I did not like how this episode implies Luffy can read.
Oh, I thought the same thing.
He's like reading the gravestones. He's like, Kozuki Odin. Huh?
It's
Kozuki Momonosuke? What?
It's so funny. I don't know. It's like, I love this dumb captain, but anytime anything requires him to actually show reading, I just can't believe it. Like, I don't think he's an absolute moron. I just don't think he can read well.
I feel like the manga has demonstrated that he can't. More or less.
He definitely can't count.
And there's a great there's a really good animated face from Luffy. I remember last week people were sharing the clip from the next episode preview where Luffy's just kind of like sweating and he's not really believing the story that Law's telling him. Like, what? No, that's not possible.
Yeah, that's a great little moment with the animation. It was kind of out of nowhere, but I really digged it. And the expressions this week, I think, were really good.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good episode in general. So we have a scene where Kinemon's ghost, because we've just established that he's dead, so now his ghost is appearing, and there's big build-up where he's kind of spooky. His eyes are glowing. He's moaning. He's very ghost-like up until we realize he's just got the runs. And I love how as this joke lands, there's a cutaway to like a bird pooping on his grave.
There's a lot of poop humor in this, and it's all actually really funny.
I was very surprised. I thought that was very bold of them. So Okiku arrives and she starts glomping on to Kinemon and hugging him, and he's trying to like push her away, like, "Oh, you're too much." But she's smothering him, and this is where Kiku learns that Luffy and Law they're the pirates that Kinemon and the others brought into the country to fight Orochi, and likewise, Luffy and Law are learning that Kiku and Kinemon are friends.
I like seeing I guess it's because we've seen Kinemon around people who are normal size, and we see Kiku around people who are normal size. So seeing them together is just really funny because we forget how tall they both are.
Yeah. And this is when Momonosuke appears, and he's showing Luffy his cool new sword tricks. And Momo has to like get because Kiku tries to scold Luffy for kind of speaking informally to Momonosuke, and Momo has to allow it. He's like, no, it's okay. And that is when Sanji and the rest of the Thousand Sunny crew arrive. They've been looking for Luffy all over the place. Sanji swam to the bottom of the ocean to make sure that he didn't drown, and like therefore he's got some beefcake.
No shirts needed right now.
Yeah. And so they arrive and they kind of all have their regular banter. Momo goes to hug Nami. Brooke gets into a fight with Momo because Momo is Momo. And then Sachi and Penguin are arriving, and they're like, "Oh, Beppo, he's just over in the woods because he also has the runs." And then we cut to Beppo and we like hear him pooping. We hear his like weird diarrhea splats. Like,
I couldn't believe they did that. I was like, I thought it was just gonna be like Beppo in the corner, and then like nothing. But my God.
So getting all that goofy stuff out of the way, so that we can huddle inside of the ruins of the castle. Get back inside. There's kind of debris all over the place. A big piece of wood hits Chopper on the head. Poor kid didn't deserve that.
Out of nowhere.
And so the samurai are sitting everyone down, and they're like, "Okay, well, we have another secret to let you guys in on."
Surprise.
Which is a little much after the last time we were together. They had to reveal that Kinemon and Momonosuke weren't actually father and son. And then now they're telling us, "Oh, that wasn't actually that wasn't the big lie. The actual secret was that we are time travelers from the past. We have arrived 20 years from the past to fight Orochi, and this is our story." And Luffy has a big what face, and then that's to be continued. What'd you think of the episode, Jill?
I thought it was fun. It felt long in a good way. All of the scenes I think were done well. It didn't seem like there was a ton of padding. Yeah, it's all, and like we were talking about, like all the little extra things I think worked in pretty well. Zoro actually doing something when he fought the tiger. That the older guy listening in on the children. I thought it was done really well. I liked the animation. I didn't see anything that was terrible. And the expressions, I think, were done really well this episode on all the characters.
Yeah, this is a pretty good episode. I really like the additions that they've added from that wasn't in the manga. I think they all work to improve the story. Like the Zoro thing, people complained about that a lot, but I thought it was pretty funny. Like I don't mind I don't mind that kind of whatchamacallit. Just like the obviousness of that, just we need Zoro out of the story, or we need Zoro going somewhere else in a different direction in the story, so that other things can happen later.
I mean, to be fair,
and so let's not even pretend to like make it organic. But
yeah, I mean, if Kiku straight up ran away and showed up 5 minutes later, just out of nowhere, so like I like Zoro disappearing better than that. I also I dig animals with swords. I think it's always funny, especially when it's in their mouths like that. It's great.
I'm trying to think of a Pokemon joke to make about Pokemon Sword, but okay. Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think this is a good episode. This is the first episode in a while, I think, that was almost an entire chapter's worth of material. I think that's part of why it feels like there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think so. There's a bunch of scenes.
Still not a whole chapter, just almost a full chapter, and that is enough to make the episode feel just jam-packed with stuff.
Yeah, which is good. That's a good thing to get when the anime. It's better than throwing in a bunch of filler and slowing things down even worse.
So, any other thoughts you want to say, or are we ready to move on to the next segment?
I think we're good.
All right, let's move.
This has been the One Piece Podcast, episode 595 for the week of November 11th, 2019. If you are in the New York City area this weekend, Steve and I are going to be doing a panel at AnimeNYC at the Javits Center in Manhattan. So please check that out. We're going to be doing a live manga recap of chapter 962, which comes out at 4 p.m. And our panel starts at 3:30, so it's perfect timing for that Sunday, November 17th. So again, we hope to see you there. We also have a new, just about 2-hour episode of Crewing Around with me, Steve, Alex, Ed, and Brian Newton. That's only available at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast for those $5 and up. If you're at the $3 level, we also have alternate titles and alternate images from Maddie and Steve, and this past week from Alex. And we also have our OPP Japan documentary, OPP 10 videos, and a lot more, and photos, over like 3,000 photos from our most recent trip from Japan. So check all of that out again at patreon.com/OnePiecePodcast. And, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all of that. And soundcloud.com/OnePiecePodcast. We're on Stitcher. And we're on TuneIn. We're basically everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, and so on. You could also call us at our phone number, which is 347-497-MAJI. That again is 347-497-6254. You could call us anytime. And we'll be back with our regularly scheduled episode. Although I don't think I will be back, but we'll have the whole crew here to talk about chapter 962. And if you want to hear me or see me, I will be at AnimeNYC on Sunday and probably around the convention that whole weekend, so feel free to say hello. And until then, my name is Zach, and we'll see you next week, everyone. Goodbye.